They say opposites attract.
Well, how about these opposites? Daddies and sons.
You're listening to Daddy and Son.
A podcast where we explore the dynamics of daddy and son relationships, multi-generational views.
And everything else in between.
Welcome back to another episode of Daddy and Son. My name is Alex.
And I'm Norm.
And as we wrap up spooky season, and I know that it's time, and folks are already putting up their Christmas tree. I know I have friends who are have already put up their Christmas lights.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow. I mean, I still see pumpkins outside people's apartments and houses from last night, so they better hurry up.
I heard that Church Street was busy.
I don't know. Although I walked on it today and it looked quite ordinary as usual.
Not torn
Uneventful.
up, garbage everywhere.
Well, it sort of looks low life now these days anyway, but I certainly wouldn't direct someone to
Jail.
Church Street if they came to Toronto for the first time.
Well, if you are listening and you have guessed based on when you listen to this podcast, it would have been the day of Halloween. And I want to, as we are wrapping up, getting into our 23rd out of 25 episodes for the season. Just want to thank everyone for continuously listening, all the fans of the show, the regular listeners, the ones that are always hitting play immediately on the day it's published. Just want to say thank you.
Yes, thank you.
What do you have for us today? Today's a Norm production.
Well, I just want to say as part of the spooky season, there's something kind of spooky happening next week south of the border, and we want to salute our U.S. friends. By the time you're listening to this, or by the time, most of you will be listening, the election will probably be over.
I know.
So we won't ask for anybody's prediction, but it's going to be a very long and interesting evening. So all the best to our American friends. Don't forget to vote. Hope you did vote. And spooky season. I don't know if spooky's the right way, but what we're going to talk about today, and this is something I said we should chat about before you kind of created the theme of spooky season, because it's just something that I kind of interested in and thought we could talk about, and that is NDEs.
What's an NDE?
That
Non-disclosure something?
I'm glad. I'm glad you asked that question. It could talk about that, but that's not what we're going to talk about. It could stand for that, but we're not going to talk about that. It's called, at least in the NDE that I'm talking about, a near-death experience.
Oh.
A near-death experience. And I'm curious about these things because I have had people tell me about their NDEs. I've heard them first-person accounts. I've heard second-person accounts. And more recently, on YouTube and on the internet, there just seem to be a lot more of them. There's a lot more reporting. So I thought, you know what? I wonder if people are interested in that. What is it telling us about life? Has anybody out there ever had one or know someone that's had one? Why do I find these fascinating? Because they really are about another world.
Mm-hmm.
And I see you looking at me kind of wondering what's going on in Cheeseman's head here. Like, what's he thinking? Well, you know what?
Well,
it's fascinating. I listen to these stories, and these people are telling real life stories, and I'm thinking there's got to be something to this.
Well, here's the thing. The reason I'm looking at you with such wonder, it's because
I'm a wonderful person.
You're a very religious person. We've kind of spoken about this, shout out to previous episode. We kind of discussed the difference between spirituality and being spiritual and being, gay at the same time.
That was
And
5 or 6
navigating that.
That was episode 5 or 6 years ago, it seems.
Seems like a long time. But I know of you to just be a religious person. So when I think about this situation or this topic, and your I wouldn't say fascination, but your investigation into it, so to speak, it's wondering to see, because
You're wondering what's ticking in this guy that makes him interested in this
what's
stuff.
going on in your mind, because that seems like something that's more down my rabbit hole. It seems like something that's more up my alley, because
Why is that?
I don't know. Near-death experience just sounds more esoterical to me than it sounds religious. But then again, when we think about religious instances where we talk about near-death experience or death experiences, whether that's with Jesus Christ himself or Lazarus, you name it, there is lots of reference to these things biblically, one must say. So,
True. Just for those who don't know, Lazarus was raised from the dead by Jesus after 3 days. That was more than a near-death experience. That was a
dead experience.
Honey, he was a dead experience. Yeah. And only Jesus could bring him back at that point, I'm pretty sure. But, I can understand your question. I mean, first of all, I think it's possibly more appropriate for an older person to be more thinking about what's going to happen at the end of life than for a younger person. So I'm interested that a son, thinks you would be more interested in this topic. Although, you know what? It's about life. It's about the end of life. That's a topic that's going to be of interest to anybody at any time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, life is life.
But take case into point last week when we had the conversation about, check out last week's episode called Noah's Prep Kit, where we spoke about doomsday prepping. And this is something that has been plaguing me and seems to be plaguing a lot of younger people because of the state of the world, because of global warming, different crises, wars, diseases that are making resurgences, or new diseases that we haven't even heard of because they existed long before human record, but because some rainforest is being chopped down or some glacial ice cap is being melted, the disease is now being released into the world. And now we are left with situations like the previous pandemic, right? So we see these things happening and young people are taking notice, and we have a different outlook to it, I think, versus older people. And while we may not think of it as at an esoterical level, which I think,
meaning a non-physical level.
Yeah. I think.
But you're concerned about
we're
what's
still
happening to the
concerned
world.
about what's happening to the world, and we're still concerned about death and preparing for death, or what may happen after death. We still think about these things. I just think from a different level, and I think the reason for that is there's a less sense of, for older people, there's less sense of urgency. In fact, let me rephrase that. It's not urgency. There's a less of a sense of fear
about the world
around the how, or even so much the when death will happen. I think the thought process is more about, so it's less about the when and more about the how. That's what I meant to say.
Okay. Well, I know when I was younger, I didn't think a whole lot about the end of life. I mean, I had been a believer, a Christian for a long time. So, I mean, I kind of been told what's going to happen and what I believe that. But the NDE is as much a product of modern medicine and the ability of modern medicine to revive people in many instances that have had a trauma and have almost slipped off out of this world. But I'll tell you, I remember people telling me about experiences 30, 40 years ago when I was much younger. So this is a phenomenon that's been with us. It's just it's a part of life, and I'm happy. I'm fascinated by it because I think it's tells you it reveals what comes after this life, and something is going to happen. Something is going to come, and do NDEs provide any insight? And are there messages for us in this? So that's kind of why I'm curious about this topic.
Well, if I think I get enough insight by doing mushrooms, but also refer to our previous episode about my rant on taking mushrooms. But in your own words, how would you describe NDE?
Well, I can tell you from the people that have had one who have told me about them that they had real experiences of being somewhere else.
So like they were in their home and they fell asleep on the couch, but maybe they thought they died.
One of them was in the hospital, very, very sick, and suddenly walked into saw this huge choir of people singing. And I remember him telling me that. A
huge choir of people singing.
They were singing and praising God.
Oh wow!
Just like that. He was there without going down through a long tunnel or anything like that. Another friend.
I don't know. That kind of sounds nice.
Well, some of these are very beautiful experiences. Another friend, he's gone now, but he was telling me about this experience. I don't remember quite. He must have been sick at night. He went into the bathroom. He collapsed, and the next thing he knew, he was looking at people. He said, I remember him describing, he said, it's a very different environment up there. Those were his words. And he said, I remember somebody here, I couldn't see him, but he was kind of over my shoulder, sort of saying, you're going to be okay. These people will be here when you come back next time. That was the message he had. And then the next thing he knew, he was back in his body, and he remembers an EMS or a fireman saying, well, where are we going to move the body?
Where was he?
He was at home at that point. He was at home.
Oh, my.
And at that point, the EMS had arrived, and they thought he was expired, and he actually wakes up and hears them saying, well, where should we move the body? Now, those are people that had those experiences.
That is scary.
Well, here's another one. A friend of mine, she was very sick. She was I guess she was in surgery. And then the next thing that she knows, she's looking at herself from 5 or 10 feet up. And again, she had a sense that, don't worry, things are going to be okay. And the next day she was talking to the doctor, and the doctor was saying, well, I'm glad you're feeling better, Susan, because yesterday we almost lost you.
Not Susan. Sorry.
Well,
it is just the most generic
Susan.
White name I can, lady name I can.
Well, she was white, but that's quite irrelevant. I mean,
sorry.
All these people, so those stories have fascinated me, and I think they have reinforced my faith, but they've also,
I mean,
why
it does
are people
sound
having
humbling.
This thing? Yeah.
It does. Have you ever had your own NDE? Or do you think if you did, it would be too traumatic for you, so you probably put it out of your mind?
Oh, honey, I'd probably want to stay. From what I've heard. I don't think I have. I've had some dreams, but I haven't one of those. But personally, no, I haven't. And if I had, I would talk about it for sure. And I'm not here trying to proselyte. I'm not trying to promote. I'm just saying, I think this is a topic that fascinates me and fascinates others. And it is the fact that there are more of them, and there are more of them out on the web. I think that there's a message coming to humans that, hey, you got to pay attention to spiritual things. You've got to pay attention that there is a God in this universe, and this is not the only life we have. Life is going to continue after this one. And that's an important message for people who are going through life. And it's certainly a message that folks who are older probably have a little bit more in their mind than folks that are younger.
Well,
Does
I
that make
think
sense?
I think these things are collective phenomenons. And I do believe that if people from across the world, from different cultures, who don't even speak the same languages are having the same experience.
Exactly.
They don't even have to even share the same religious beliefs, but they're having similar experiences where they can talk about these out of body experiences, right? That has inspired so many books, literature, even movies. You know, there
Heaven
has
Can Wait. Wasn't that a movie a few years ago? Heaven Can Wait. That would be a little.
that
sorry,
sounds
that would
very
be a.
Christian. I
It
don't
would
know.
no, it wasn't. But it was. I forget the actor, but that was a good 20 years ago. Forgive me. I probably weren't watching movies in those days.
Let me see.
Oh, we're going to search it. Heaven Can Wait.
Heaven Can Wait.
Who was the
Um,
actor? in this?
Heaven Can Wait first aid training. That's literally comes up first. But it is a 1978 comedy movie.
Oh, was it that long ago?
How dare you?
Who's the actor? Come on, it was
Joe
Warren
Pedlington. Oh, Warren
Warren Beatty.
Warren Beatty.
Yes, that's right. See, I 78. Was it that? I just thought it was 20 years ago.
Yes, released June 28, 19. Everything feels like 28 years ago for you now.
Oh, be quiet. Be
When we're-
quiet, son.
When we're blessed to live your age.
Don't tell any secrets.
Quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams is killed in an auto accident. It's always an auto accident with Hollywood. In the afterlife, Joe discovers that his guardian angel, Buck Henry, has taken him from his body prematurely, and he is due many more years on Earth. Unable to return to his body, Joe assumes the form of a greedy millionaire industrialist, Leo Farnsworth. As Farnsworth, Joe attempts to return to football and falls in love with environmental activist Betty Logan, starred by Julie Christie. Interesting.
But if it's the same movie, there's a scene where he suddenly realizes, I'm not alive anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's well into the movie. And he's fallen in love with this person, and she can't see him. Is that the same movie that I'm thinking of, or am I thinking of, am I mixing my movies up?
Are you mixing? That sounds like Ghost to me.
Oh. Possibly it is. You know what? I mix people's names up and I mix movies up. I can't help it. It comes with age.
Well, we can put that out there for the watch list of those who are looking for, an alternative watch for spooky season, something that is spooky but not too spooky. Heaven Can Wait, 1978.
1978. That was the year I was going into business school. My goodness, that's hard to believe. My goodness.
A young, impressionable Norm.
Well, what can I say? At least I got through business school.
Taking Toronto or Ottawa by storm. Which was it?
Well, business school was London, Ontario.
Ew.
Hey, best business school in the country.
Western? Ivy?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Never mind. That's my alma mater. Never mind. I take that back.
There you go. Throwing shade and it comes right back to you.
So, yeah, we're going to just take a quick break and then we'll be right back. What interested you in this, and what is it that you have found chronologically? Like what have you noticed about the sequence of these situations? Is there any notable patterns, anything that you'd like to share with me as a son?
Well, I remember when my grandmother died. We called her Gran. I was young. I was 4 years old. And actually, I do remember that. And I remember asking my mother.
At 4?
Yeah.
Today? You still remember today?
Yeah, I remember that.
Wow.
And I said to my mother, well, how do we go to heaven? Because, I asked, where's Gran? Well, Gran's in heaven. Well, how do we go to heaven? Do we go to heaven with our clothes on? And my mother kept saying, no. So, you know how mothers are. They're not going to explain everything to a 4-year-old. So I've always been fascinated with what happens after this life. I guess it's just something that I have, and as a believer, I know I'm leaving this earth and I'm going to spend it with God forever. That is the promise of a Christian, and it's real. And these NDEs for Christians reinforce that. So this has been something that's, I don't talk about this with a whole lot of people. We're talking about it here. But to be honest with you, I don't share this with most friends. I don't talk about this very much. But it's something that to me is very real, and it helps support and reinforce my faith. And it also says, hey folks, if you're not thinking about what comes after this life, it's time that you did. And I think that's the message of NDEs for those people who read it. Those who have experienced it, especially people who weren't particularly believers, they've come out of these experiences, wow, there is a whole spiritual realm. For some people, it causes them to believe in God and faith. Others are just sort of more sensitized to spiritual reality, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily become Christians or believers, but they say, wow, there definitely is something out there. I need to sit back and kind of watch what's going on here. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to start thinking about the end of the world, because the end of the world is going to happen one day. It really is. And that's where my head is at. That said, I don't spend 100% of my time thinking about this.
Of course not. I mean, you're still alive.
Yeah.
And at your age,
I'm
there's more important things.
I'm interested in politics. I'm interested in boys. I'm interested in health. I'm interested in staying physically fit. In sons.
In
yes.
taxes.
Taxes. I don't like taxes. Is that what your taxes? But anyway, so, and we're looking always for good things to talk about here. And
can I be honest about my thought process? From my perspective as someone who is more spiritual and someone who's also a scientist, I think of NDEs as people experiencing another dimension.
Absolutely.
I've spoken openly here about my use of cannabis and psychedelic mushrooms. And these are the only, let me emphasize, only recreational drugs I will ever take. Only. And the reason behind that, and I've always stated this, anything that is a compound, anything that it has to be made into a substance, it has to be made into a lab, it has to be cooked, I do not consume it. So if I can grow it myself and pick it from the earth, that is the only thing that I will put inside my body. So I will take mushrooms because I can grow that myself.
You're a naturalist.
I'm a naturalist. Thank you. I like that.
A high naturalist.
I like that. I see what you did there. And so for me specifically, I've had moments where I've taken mushrooms and I've had conversations with the dead. I think I told you about that night when I took the mushrooms and I had a 3-hour-long conversation with my dead mother. I was sitting right here on this couch, right here, just, staring out into the void, and there she appeared. And we had a kiki. We had a
What did you talk about?
We spoke about so many things, but I think predominantly what we spoke about was some things that were happening with me personally at the time regarding dating. And she was giving me some really solid advice. And I remember, I'll never forget, it lives in my mind rent-free, vividly.
Sorry, it lives in your mind rent-free? Is that what you said?
Rent-free.
I haven't heard that expression. Well, rent-free is kind of an oxymoron, but carry on.
I remember because Black is King by Beyonce, the movie was I had that on the television running in the background, and I was sitting there just talking to her. No, probably if anybody had walked in and saw me, they'd think I'm crazy. They'd see me on the couch talking to myself. But she was as real to me in that moment as you are right now, physically in front of me. The power of the mind. And I strongly believe in that moment, what had happened was, and you probably are gonna be rolling your eyes when I say this.
No, I'm not judgmental. I'm listening.
My third eye had opened up, and I was able to see into a different plane, a different dimension. Right? Mathematically, we know that life does experience in different dimensions. Right? And if that is so, if we as humans only see three-dimensionally, right? Who is to say that with the use of stimulants, it cannot open us up to see things in other dimensions or from a different dimension? And that's kind of how that's how I think about near-death experiences. It reminds me of going back to my time when I had that mushroom high and I was able to see beyond the veil. Ironically, it was also last October.
Well, have you had any experience talking to any other people?
No.
Okay, just your mother. And was she herself? Was it her? Was she talking about things that were familiar to you? And
Yeah.
And she was loving and encouraging?
She was talking about things that was so familiar to me. In fact, she was talking to me about things, and I kid you not, things that ended up coming to pass in my life.
Did she have any warnings for you or cautions for you?
She didn't have warnings or cautions. It was more, which, knowing my mother, she's not that type of person where she would sow doubt or fear. But she did say to me, as an example, she said, your aunt is going to reach out to you. When she does, take the call. And I kid you not, 3.5 weeks later, I got a call from an unknown UK number. And I almost did not answer the phone because in my line of work, when I get cold calls, I don't answer them.
Yep. Yeah, I know what you mean. And a lot of them these days
are robocalls or something, right?
Yeah.
And I kid you not, it was my 83-year-old aunt who was calling me to reconnect. I hadn't heard from this lady since I was 15 years old. So that was 15 years ago.
Well, you know what? Who can explain that?
How? Exactly. I don't necessarily think that I had a near-death experience.
No.
But when I think about near-death experience, I think it about as people seeing the veil. Well, whatever it is that...
I think you've gone through the veil. No, literally. I think you've gone through it because some people just experience going through this tunnel and darkness and then suddenly light. You just suddenly had a conversation with someone that's no longer on this earth.
On this earth.
That's and it was credible in your mind. It was your mom.
There was no other explanation.
Did you feel your mother's love?
I felt her love.
Wow. I've had a dream.
It was very reminiscent of the very last night that we had before she died.
Wow. Well, you know what? Occasionally, and this is very seldomly, I will have, and these are the dreams you remember. When you've had a dream of someone you know that's no longer here that you love very much, you almost feel you felt that person right there. And I've felt a couple of times conversations with my mother in my dream where I just felt that was her. She was right there. It wasn't like you had sitting on the couch. I was asleep. Mm-hmm. But I woke up thinking, wow, that was a great visit.
You felt her presence.
Yeah, I knew it was her. I just knew that was Mom.
Yeah.
How can you explain that?
Well, this is what I'm saying. I definitely my thought process is, and I have no scientific basis on this, but again, just from the the evidence that has presented itself to me and my knowledge in physics and chemistry, I do believe that whatever it is that affects the brain, whatever psychoactive agent that affects the brain when you get into that deep state of high when you take psychedelics, who knows, maybe it shuts the brain down or slows the brain the brain processing power down to a level in which or heightens it to a level in which you can see or experience things that in a very sober state or a lucid state you're unable to. And I think that is quite similar to when someone passes away but they haven't really passed, or when someone is unconscious, or they have a concussion, or they overdose, and they feel like they're crossing over, but they're not quite dead. The heart hasn't yet stopped, but there's a part of the brain that has opened up.
Well, in some cases, the heart has stopped. I mean, there's a lot of evidence of that in an NDE, and people are suddenly not in their physical bodies. They're looking at their physical bodies, and they're also aware of people around the room where they were just leaving, and they know what those people are thinking. Like there's all kinds of stuff going on here. Let's face it.
Have you ever seen Grotesquerie?
No.
It's on Disney Plus. It's a new Ryan Murphy series.
I have Disney Plus. I wonder why.
We'll get to that shortly.
Son. Thank you, son. I haven't watched it lately, though.
So there's a new series on it called Grotesquerie, and it stars Niecy Nash, and she is a detective.
Oh, is it a police show?
Yeah.
Oh, I love those.
It's a crime drama.
Oh, I love those.
But
Grotesquerie. I've got to remind
she's investigating she's a small town detective, and they're forcing her to hand over the case to the FBI, and she refuses to hand over the case to the FBI because there's a serial killer that is recreating crimes based on biblical text.
Ay, ay, ay.
And basically in mid-season it's a switch up, right? It's a switch up, and the switch up, it turns out that she was actually in a coma, and while she was in a coma, she was witnessing all these things happen, and the series end. It's kind of setting up the series for season 2.
Don't tell me the end, please. I might want to watch it.
But it's extremely relevant to the topic that we're having today. If you haven't seen Grotesquerie, check it out. Support Niecy Nash. I know she's a comedian, but oftentimes I forget that this woman is a comedian because the way how she does drama, I'm telling you, there is either a Golden Globe,
wow,
or an Emmy coming down the pipeline for her performance in Grotesquerie.
Do you know, I'm amazed at your schedule and all the things going on in your life that you have any time to watch Disney Plus.
Well, that's why I only get 5 hours of sleep per day.
You sound like a dad when it comes to the amount of sleep. Now, before this is not rushing this discussion, but I would like to, as tonight's producer, take a couple of minutes at the end and talk about who we think is going to win next week.
Okay. You know what? Actually, that is actually quite a good pivot.
Oh, okay. By the way, folks, I've been accused of rushing the discussion. I have no interest in doing
rushing
that.
me. Rush.
Well, I'm a person that likes to get to the point with things and move on to the next.
Just let the honking of the horn outside. Honk, rush.
Oh yeah, that's what happens in this city. Although our traffic's going to get better now that Mr. Ford's going to do away with those bike lanes, but I digress.
Yes. Fuck them bikers. I'm sorry. I know you've taken up biking, but fuck them bikers.
No, listen, you know what? I have a good friend who's a very avid biker. He won't even use the bike lanes. He doesn't like them. He always uses the arterial roads anyway.
Or
But he rides on the sidewalks.
that's what biking is meant for. Not on the sidewalks, or like I'm walking upwards and they're coming down on the sidewalk that's are limited in my direction. And we have spent millions of dollars developing bike lanes for them. Sometimes I just want to kick them off into traffic.
Yeah, the issue is going to be who's going to pay for doing away with the bike lanes. But anyway, let's get on with the topic you also wanted to talk about, or we want to talk about, which is, in addition to the fact that next week one of our people here has a birthday, the son.
I know. I'm becoming closer to becoming a baby daddy.
Oh, you're a long way from it, trust me. When I was your age, that you're going to be next week, was in the middle of the 80s. So you're a long way from being a daddy.
I'm going to be 32. My age is going to fall off the almanac.
Oh.
It will no longer be on the calendar.
You're still young, hot, and sexy.
One of the things that I think is so scary, keeping in theme of spooky season about this situation is it doesn't matter who wins. It's going to be a very tumultuous time.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely going to be a quite a tumultuous time. And a part of me just feels like Trump is going to win. I feel he's going to win. Deep inside my body, I feel like he's going to win. And whether he wins yes or no, there's going to be chaos. There's going to be chaos. I know people, Black Americans, who have already started making moves to leave. In fact, in my company, right, we've given people time off who live in the US to be able to make preparations for the upcoming elections because
You mean to go out and vote? You're giving them time to go vote? Is that what you mean?
Go vote and maybe get the hell out of Dodge if necessary.
Well,
I can actually show you right now on our company intranet the amount of people who are Americans who have taken like from yesterday, today, and Monday off work. It's because people
there are some other things going on in your company right now which may be influencing.
That may be influencing that too, but that came before. The recommendation came before that.
Well, I would have agreed with you a week or two ago that I thought Trump was going to make it because I didn't think Kamala had made the business case. She hadn't made the sale. However, I think in the last week, what's happened is a couple of things. One, the implosion of Trump is happening in his message a little bit more. The Madison Square Garden, he's just looking weird. The other thing is women. Women are voting at a rate of 55% in pre-election day voting. Only they're outvoting men by 55 to 45.
Yeah.
In other words, people that show up to vote in advance polls, as we call them here in Canada, more women are voting than men. Women are more inclined to vote Democrat, and the issue that's informing them right now is abortion.
Sorry, Black women are more inclined to vote Democrat. Like, we have to be specific.
Well, okay, but there are more women now
Because
voting, but the abortion issue is impacting all women, Black and white, okay?
Correct, but
that's a good sign for Kamala Harris. The other thing is that a number of Republicans have come out recently and are saying, and quietly saying, I can't support this guy. I can't. And I think there's a lot of quiet, non-vocal people who are just going to quietly vote for Kamala Harris. They may have to hold their nose while they do because they're lifelong Republicans.
Not hold their nose.
but they are not going to vote for Trump because they support their Constitution. and they don't want to see what he's going to do.
What I find extremely funny is
That's what
you have people like Tucker Carlson, right? Who are out here speaking at the rally like that the one that took place in Madison Square Garden, already setting up, not only throughout the past year in their podcast, setting it up that if the Democrats win, that the election was stolen. Did you see the whole spread that was put out by the Wall Street Journal about they did a deep dive into podcasts and how podcasts have been used as a tool, never before, but now it's been used as a tool, as a weapon by the far right to sow doubt in before the election happens, to sow doubt in people's minds about election results.
They're using every means to communicate that.
And some of the ones that were highlighted was RFK Jr. podcast.
He's a drip.
Tucker Carlson's podcast, Joe Rogan Experience, which is arguably the biggest podcast in North America right now, not just Canada, but the US and Mexico.
I've never listened to him. I got to do that.
And as well as his name starts with a B. It eludes me right now. Anyways, the point is that what I find interesting is that wasn't Tucker the same one who lost his job after the Dominion lawsuit for the $400 million from Fox because he came out saying in a voice recording that he doesn't even believe half the stuff he says, and he thinks that Trump is a lunatic?
Yeah. That was last year, right?
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, yeah.
How strange that people have short-term memory.
Well,
and he's now speaking at the national at a national stage rally.
He's always been a Trump admirer, though. I mean, he's look. We'll know in 5 days, 6 days, maybe longer.
I'm telling you,
it's going to be a fascinating evening.
If Trump wins, America is fucked. And not just, when I say America, I'm not talking about the United States of America. I'm talking about America. I'm talking about Mexico. I'm talking about Canada. Because we are part of America.
Well, I think we have our own problems that we should try to worry about. I don't know that, whatever happens south of the border is going to happen. The country is going to keep ticking along.
And if you think that what happens south of the border does not have a direct impact, especially on us here in Toronto, we are the largest bordering city to the United States.
But that doesn't... We're the largest American city in Canada is the way I would put it.
That's true too.
I mean, most Americans that come here saying this is like an American city. Well, yeah, cities are cities, for crying out loud.
Cities are cities.
I mean, yeah, we have buildings, we have restaurants, we have cafes, we have Starbucks.
But we already know that Toronto is a refuge city. And one of the things that I see coming to pass is best written in the words of Margaret Atwood. I honestly believe that this is a situation where martial law may take place, and we're going to see an influx of people coming in from the United States seeking refuge in Canada. I would not be surprised. I hope it doesn't happen, I hope I'm wrong. I hope my prediction is wrong. But if my prediction does come to pass, I'm going to be able to sit across from this table and say, I told you so.
Well, I think if they do, they'll spend 48 hours here and say, I think I'm going back home. Sorry.
Time will tell.
I'm not as optimistic about, or I don't know if the word is optimistic. I don't anticipate an influx of Americans into Canada. I think that they're going to squirm and they'll figure out a way to make it work. There'll be a few that want to come here, but you know what? We're making it harder for people to come here right now, so this isn't the time.
According to our PM, listen, all I know is, at the end of the day, whiteness is on the ballot. Whiteness in the United States as a method of preservation of a people is on the ballot. And it is definitely going to have a direct impact in how we as a country, Canada as a country, moves with doing business, it's going to definitely impact tourism. It's definitely going to impact image. I mean, Trump is already talking about the US being thought about as garbage. I mean, we don't think the US is garbage, we think he's garbage, but that's a whole other conversation.
You know what? America is still the most amazing, greatest country in the world. They are the most innovative. They are most entrepreneurial. They know how to run things. They know how to execute things. And notwithstanding a messed up politics, they still are great people.
I know a country called Great Britain, which will beg to differ.
Well, I'm sorry, but they have their own problems right now, and I know you like the UK because you were born there, as I recall.
Well, not even half the population, and still quite, and arguably, equally as powerful GDP and even more powerful dollar. So,
I beg to differ. I think the United States is a much more. Anyway, this is a side issue. The issue is who's going to win, what impact will it have in the country, because that's more important, and what spin-off effects will it have here in other countries. We will have to talk about those issues down the road.
We will know. 5 more days till election, so by next week this time, we'll either be quivering while we discuss this, or we will be...
4 more days, actually.
Friday, Saturday,
Tuesday, yes.
4 more days.
This is a Friday.
We'll be, you know, either...
Don't go to bed early on Tuesday night,
We'll be
folks.
either having a requiem or a celebration. We'll know. All right, folks, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for tuning into today's podcast. As usual, if you made it all the way to the end, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Daddy and Son. If you have any questions for Norma or myself, send them over to daddyandsonpodcast@gmail.com. That's DADDYANDSON podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, sons, be good to your daddies.
And dads, be good to your sons, kind to your sons.
I know that's right.